Welcome to our weekend Bucky call. This is March 19th or 20th, depending on which continent you're on. And we're going to talk about spheres and tetrahedrons. So, Manu, how are you feeling and what do you expect out of the call tonight?
I feel good. We are 5 on this call at this time. And it's really encouraging. I'm also happy that Kelly seems more consistent now and is here. John, thank you. And what I expect is that we just continue on what we have been doing, infirming the geometry, making it easy to understand, and applying it to our social environment in order to improve, to build artifacts that improve the lives of as many as we can. That's what I expect. John, how do you feel? What do you expect?
Feeling great. Lovely morning. It's an autumn morning in Perth, finally. Went for a walk by the river, which was lovely. And grateful to be here. It's always good to catch up with you fellows who add to my learning. Yes, more spheres, more tetrahedra. And for me, I'd like to understand more about the application of it, how I apply it to my life and my business. So that's what I would like to take out of today. So Kelly, how do you feel and what do you hope to take out of today?
I'm feeling very, very tired. Last week I left early because I just had enough. And I think that talking about triangles and spheres and not applying it to life are part of the problem. When we're looking at this, you know, the main thing is it's a social event, not a science event. And I think that we get too caught up in the triangle and the sphere, and where really we want to have a conversation with each person on the call as to how it relates, and how it relates could be different each time. So I don't know. I think we've been going on triangles and spheres for weeks now, and I think it's too much. That's just my opinion. That's how I feel. And what I hope to get out of it is more of the social aspect of what it is that we do. So with that, Joe, how do you feel and what do you want to get out of it?
I'm a bit tired as well, actually, even though I got a little bit of rest. So I'm a little run down. I too always look for how to use these concepts in our lives, and to understand. When I say understand the whole, yes, it's using, you know, spheres and triangles, but it's also kind of seeing where I could use that type of thought in my everyday life. So I agree with you, Kelly. It's good to see you here and have you here regularly as well. But I'm learning each week. I'm always taking away something from this group, and I always appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody's hard work. And Raffers, how do you feel, and what are you taking away from today? What would you like to take away from today?
Oh, thank you, Joe. It's great to be here. It's great to see Kelly as well. Always good to have you back, mate. And what I expected, well, what I expected is again to keep on working on how we make this call work for everybody, I think. And that's been the idea, and all the hard work that has been put in. And so it's always great to have feedback and see where the feedback takes us as well. So I very much look forward to how the call develops today. So who hasn't gone yet?
Steve.
Manu.
Okay.
Manu. Sorry, Manu. I always forget Manu.
I wonder why. You have something against Manu, Kelly. I don't know why. Anyway, Manu, how do you feel? What do you expect to get out?
I've been.
He already went. He already went, Steve. It's Steve.
Oh, you already went. Okay, so you didn't miss him, Kelly. So, Steve, how do you feel? What do you expect to get out to?
Okay, well, I like the social event of this call, and I frustrate that we had as many as 25 people on this call over the last year. And then gradually we're down to a core for many reasons. And Tam has been participating in over the last few weeks with this funding opportunity where she's participated in like a X Factor funding TV program. And I've sent out those links to everybody so you could watch those programs and see those things and see how she's participating. Evidently, I think they're going to air, and when they air, then they're going to be getting votes and raising money. And I think that understanding Anne's situation could really support her if we referred people out, and could help her get some funding. I don't know how those shows actually work, but blessings to Anne. Susan contacted me and said that she was doing surgery tonight. Henry contacted me earlier today in a roundabout way, joining the call at about 3 o'clock this afternoon. And I was hoping he would come back tonight. So I see that little spurts of energy. So we're going to go ahead and pursue tonight. I think I look at, I make a major effort to expand my brain. And the more I can understand a sphere, the more I can understand a triangle, the more I can understand a tetrahedron, the more I can understand that geometry, I have a sense that I'm actually expand my capacity to look at something with a new perspective. And I'm hoping that's what everybody gets out of these calls. That's certainly what I'm getting out of it. I found an interesting video today that kind of that shows how different perspectives change a complete topology of the situation, or topography. But let's see what this does. See if you can relate to this. So this is a design, and then we're now rotating the axis to see the same configuration from different perspectives. And this actually rotates vertically and horizontally. And I think that's what, as I look at the Bucky language and what's happening with, to think that all of these different shapes can be construed out of the same diagram just by adjusting the perspective, the plane of view, the axis of perception. And that's exactly what I think we're doing in these calls. So I thought that was exciting. And there we go. So we've been doing spheres tonight over the last couple of weeks because they've been kind of complicated. We did not finish these last part of the words here. And so I kind of drew a line, and I thought we'd take a look at this and then move off into tetrahedron. And this, we're going to be talking all about equilibrium here and Bucky's jitterbug. But I think, and this is the wording we haven't yet tackled. So let's begin here. And John, if you feel good about that, if you want to start.
We're starting with as the frequency.
Please.
As the frequency of triangular subdivisions of a spherical constellation of omnitriangulated points approaches subvisibility, the difference between the sums of the angles around all the vertex points and the numbers of vertexes multiplied by 360 degrees remains constantly 720 degrees, which is the sum of the angles of 2 times unity of 360 degrees, which equals 1 tetrahedron, QED.
Great. Any comments or questions on this thing to start with? And for me, I've kind of given a clue by making this top part. I don't know if that's orange to you, slightly orange with this. This is the punchline of this paragraph. As the frequency of triangular subdivisions of a spherical constellation of omnitriangulated points approaches subvisibility, that equals 1 tetrahedron. So what I'm hearing this say is that when you get so small that the structure becomes subvisible, not invisible, subvisible, what I've got there in that subvisible energy is 1 tetrahedron. Now that's what I'm getting out of that. Comments or questions?
Yeah, what this says to me, Steve, is unity is plural at a minimum of two. Because you've got one 360 there, you've got to find the other 360.
Right.
And so when you look at the 720 degrees, which is the sum of the angles of 2 times unity of 360 degrees, that's what it's all about. You're seeking to find the other way, the other tetrahedron, how it fits into the picture.
And so are you saying that when it gets subvisible, one tetrahedron remains, and if I can see that other tetrahedron, then that becomes visible to me?
I don't know really, but I do know that this is unity is plural at a minimum of 2.
Right on. But I wanted to, because we can extrapolate that into any geometry of thought or a business. That,
Yeah, of course, there's
Yeah.
an inside of a business and an outside of a business.
there you go.
So when you're looking at the inside, you're looking at one tetrahedron. When you look at the outside, you're looking at another tetrahedron. It's always for me been in, out, between, and around.
Right on. Comments and questions? So this may seem obvious to you, but as I broke down the semantics of it all, subvisible is not a visible structure. It's subunity. It is experienced and it is not invisible. Subvisible is not invisible. Visible equals a visible structure. And the other concept is this concept of folding and dividing or collapsing, which we're going to see in this jitterbug video again, which I think would be appropriate to watch. And then this idea of unfolding is multiplying. Folding is dividing, unfolding is multiplying and expanding. Any other words here that catch your attention? This all sprung from looking at the idea of subvisibility. Okay, so we have the visible is the concave, the invisible is, or the subvisible is the convex.
That's the inside and outside.
There's the two. That's the unity of two as well. And as those two paradigms move together, then we have the concave, like the dome that we've been seeing over here in our navigational thing, with the convex being subvisible down below here. Now, I just was playing with these graphics and built these graphics thinking that it would add some context to it. So because over the last little while, we've been talking about azimuth and all that stuff in terms of Greek standard geometry. But is somebody starting to say something? And then even in the tetrahedron, there's this duality here, which could be construed as being concave. And then we have the other duality here, which could be construed as convex and subvisible. But the 720, that duality of 2 times 60, 2 times 360 needs to be prevalent.
Right.
Any comments or questions on this? And Manu, you've spoken the last couple weekend calls, and on Wednesday, you talked about this folding and dividing and this visible and concave. Do you want to share some stuff on that? Are you inspired at all, Manu, to share some stuff on that?
I just think that in a few kind of visible stuff, you can summarize all of this. A constellation most expanded, and then the constellation most concentrated, and the whole of that between the most extended and the concentrated is the folding, and you have all the other forms in between. And the more you fold, That is, the more you divide, you get to a close-up of something that is a tetrahedron. And the way you see it is that if you take spheres and you bring them together, closely packed, you are somewhere at the shadow intersection of all of those four spheres. And what you see, you're going to see the centers of the four spheres as a tetrahedron. And you are seeing you are in between, and you having the concave and the convex. And to show it, I can show, I don't know if I have anything here that will show it clearly, but that's the essence of what I get from it, in that you have a finite universe, and that finite universe can be most expanded, and it can also come to the most concentrated form of it, which is the unit of account, the minimum of the tetrahedron. Below the tetrahedron, it is subvisible. It is subunity. And you are seeing it.
When the tetrahedron folds in onto itself, it's a triangle.
The triangle doesn't exist.
No, but when the tetrahedron folds in onto itself, it folds into a triangle.
No,
Because
it falls into a tetrahedron, Kelly. A tetrahedron falls into
No. When you look at something and it comes together and comes in, and you do the final press, if you look at Fuller when he does his final press of the jitterbug coming in, and he's got the whole thing down, it's a triangle. And then it opens to a tetrahedron. So the minimum you can have is the triangle.
So let's watch that video. I mean, that is, here's Buckman, here's the video. We can watch that. Oh, I have to push a button on your end. Here we go. Share sound and go.
Vector equilibrium where the radii have been removed, that is the explosives. And it is, equilibrium is a completely unstable condition. That is, when we first had submarines, we used to fill the water ballast tanks so it was just at equilibrium. And then if anybody happened to just drop a monkey wrench over, we could throw the ballast out and they would tend to nose over and get into a great deal of trouble. When we began flying, then we came to what we call the stall. Stall is simply a point when at the equilibrium, at the stall, anything can happen, can go any kind of a spin. Nature abhors that equilibrium. She always, everything you and I know will always be one side or the other of the equilibrium. At any rate, this is the most expansive form of these vectors that I gave you. Now here's vector equilibrium. Can everybody see this all right? And I'm going to take this top face and move it, lower it towards the face on the floor. And this top triangle is not allowed to twist. It can only approach the triangle on the floor. Got two planes approaching each other. Understand? So this means this vertex will always be towards you here. And the vertex on the floor is towards me. So I'm going to do this. Suddenly, it's collapsed to where the square are changing. They become diamonds, then ridgepole diamonds. Now the distance between the vertexes is such that the line is exactly the same as the other vectors. Therefore, I put in 6 vectors there, and you have the icosahedron. This is the icosahedron. Vector equilibrium then comes down to the first stable form, which is the icosahedron. The vector equilibrium itself consisted of 8 tetrahedra, each of volume of 1, 6 1/2 octahedra. A half octahedra is 2, so 6 of 2 is 12. 12 and 8 are 20. The vector equilibrium volume is 20. And so it now collapses, correct. I want to show that 20ness of the vector equilibrium gets tightened up into the icosahedron with another set of vectors. The 6 more introduced, or 1 more unit of quantum. Now I'm going to keep lowering that triangle, told when the flow, not twisting at all. And now it suddenly contracts to become the octahedron. That's a very beautiful thing you watch. All vortexes approach common center at a common rate. There's absolutely symmetrical expansion, comes by up here and now contracts the other way. But the axis in my hands never rotates. Only the equator is rotating. Now I can go, supposing this is rotating in space, a group of stars, there's a mass attraction pull of another set of stars, and one then, this is trying to turn, and then it restrains this. What happens when you do that would be then, I move this around, it forces it to contract. If it's being forced to contract that way, then, remember, notice it's rotating this way, this rotates more and plunges right through and becomes the tetrahedron. We've gone all the way from vector equilibrium, icosahedron, octahedron, vector equilibrium. The octahedron is double bonded, tetrahedron is quadruple bonded. Quadrivalent, we call it. This way diamonds are with respect to carbon. We have no point do we break open. So the maximum space employed by unity is a vector equilibrium, but all the structures are within it. They're contracted form from the whole. Now notice that this can then, tetrahedron, I've had it plunge that through like that, but this can then immediately reverse itself and tetrahedron can turn inside out. The other way. Just does it absolutely spontaneously. There's basic pumping. Okay. That identifies vector equilibrium and introduces a hierarchy of accounting.
Cool. And introduces a hierarchy of accounting.
But it pushes off and on to a triangle. When he pushes down, he's pushing on a triangle. And the triangle's rotating because of the way it's designed.
Right.
And so if he took it to a tetrahedron, but if you took that, you would end up with a triangle ultimately, because the ultimate shape will be the triangle.
Right. That's the foundational shape of the tetrahedron. But the minimum structure.
Triangles are moving. Triangles, not a triangle.
Right.
There, I don't agree. Triangles are moving. Triangles are moving. But the form, the unit of account is a tetrahedron. And the tetrahedron changed into a tetrahedron. So
and it
so
can
the triangle
inside out.
Yes.
It can go one way, and then it can go the other way. So it's a triangle, and it's pushing off a triangle.
Yeah. The basic shape is this triangle, and that triangle formulates the structure. The basic structure is a tetrahedron, which is pumping. It's going, it's turning inside and going outside using the triangular shapes, plural. Yeah.
Yes.
But Steve, what are we studying? We studying things. We studying unit. We studying energy moving.
Right.
A triangle has no energy. What is the energy of a triangle?
Didn't say the triangle had energy. I said it's when you're pushing off and on, you're pushing off and on a triangle. There is a triangle there.
I haven't said that there's no triangle, but the triangle, first of all, is a local illusion.
Yes, of course.
Is a local illusion. Secondly, it is not in the account. when he said the hierarchy of account, he went from the vector equilibrium most expanded through stable forms, which is thing that we can measure, to the tetrahedron. It didn't go to the triangle. Yes, because energy is moving. At the point locally, you will have the impression, or you, the observer, will have the impression of a triangle. But it's not one triangle, there are many triangle movies there.
Yeah, I didn't say there weren't many triangles moving. I was saying that they push off the triangle. Just like when he put it in his hand, he pushed down on a triangle and pushed towards another triangle. And then all of the actions and all of the stuff moved around.
I would think that better say that you push through a window, because energy is going through a window. Then I agree.
And I think that's where you guys are saying the thing, because the
Yes.
window is the triangle. The window is the triangle. So
Yes, it's the
pushed through
window.
a triangle. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
So if you are seeing through a window out, obviously you're going to see the triangle. You're going to see the form of the triangle.
Right.
But it is energy moving from in out or out in.
On the 12 degrees of freedom.org, which is, I think it's an official Bucky site, it goes through and talks about this transition here and shows a step-by-step diagram of this collapsing, at this point almost becoming triangular and then going into the tetrahedron, but it flattens into triangles before it goes into a tetrahedron.
Mhm.
Yes, but if you take that same tetrahedron and collapse it on itself, it'll be a triangle.
Mhm.
Okay. He didn't do that in the demonstration. He does this though, and then gets to here. But I agree with you. It's the window, the triangle is the basic window, the triangle is the shape. And this configuration here is really spheres. Each one of these vertices here represents a sphere, and the spherical structure is metaphorically outlined in this framework structure. But this is actually the down here is what the energy actually looks like more precisely, I would think. So
Steve, I would say that instead of, maybe we have to change language of this sphere. You say a constellation of arrays. That's what you use more precisely.
okay, so in other words, this is a constellation.
Yes.
Yeah, gotcha. And you said a constellation of what?
Arrays of energy.
Arrays.
Because
Okay, cool.
each sphere is supposed to be an emitting center of energy, going out that way.
Hmm.
And then all of these, when you bring them closely packed, they interact into a form. That is what you see. That's why when you join the centers of all the spheres, you have a structure
Right on.
of a given type.
This is a 12 degrees of freedom right here represents the joining of each of those centers of each of the
Yes.
spheres.
Yes.
And actually there's a I think this is a pretty good, if I redo this shows here's your basic structure, and then here the degrees of freedom are being shown by the purple lines.
And how many lines are there?
12.
Yes.
There's 6 going around here, 3 up on top and 3 up on bottom. These 3 plus these 3 are 6, plus those 6 going around are 12.
Did you send
Dynamic
that?
equilibrium.
Did
It's
you
what?
send that? Did you send that out?
I haven't sent it out yet, but it'll be in today's stuff.
Okay.
So now you're talking about the 12 degrees of freedom.
Right on.
Mhm.
But we mentioned those, what Manu mentioned was the vertices forming these spheres, which he prefer to call constellations of radial energy.
Can I show what I have here, Steve?
Sure.
What we discussed last Wednesday.
Yeah.
This is what we did this at one point. So you have expanded triangles at surface just touching at vertices. And
Now,
then
Bucky starts with what form does Bucky start with in that equilibrium video? He starts with a dodecahedron or an
No, it
icosahedron?
started with the most expanded vector equilibrium. And that is it. That is, and it say it's very unstable. It is an equilibrium, but it's unstable. So you reach that, it cannot be stable for you to see it actual fact.
Yeah.
And it changes immediately.
This appears to be different than what Bucky showed because this has a pentagon in it, and what Bucky starts with has a square in it. And then when his starts to compress, the square becomes diamonds. And that, which looks more like this drawing over right here. So when it starts out with the squares, this animal here has squares. This is called a cube octahedron. I don't know, these names are a little bit elusive to me. And then it starts to collapse. So, and I have another video with another dude who kind of shows the same thing.
Which will transform itself into the icosahedron,
Well, there's a bunch of diamond shapes there.
which will yet further transform itself into the octahedron, which will yet further transform itself
There's that triangle.
into the tetrahedron.
Yeah.
Now, if you collapse that one stage further, you'll end up with a pile of triangles.
Yeah.
So when he gets to the tetrahedron, he
Yeah.
brings that all together into one, he'll have a series of triangles.
Yeah.
But I think the main lesson here is that the unit of account of energy is a tetrahedron.
Right.
That's where it is. And we count things that are stable. We count either the whole thing stable or rational fractions of them as a combination. In Becky's geometry, I said that last week on Tuesday, there are no irrational numbers. There are only rational numbers. In other words, you count entirely with the tetrahedron, octahedron, whatever you want, and in fraction of them. That is, you say a quarter of, or something of the sort, or half of it. But it's not, there is no number that is like pi, or like exponential of something. It doesn't exist in Becky's geometry. And that to me is a big stuff.
Well, without pi, there's not much purpose in life, Manu. I like pi. I not necessarily pi and phi, but I like pi.
No,
Okay.
I mean, the pi is there, but the pi is just an implied relationship between things. Like when you take the Euler's relationship, right?
Okay.
The pi is implied, the pi is there,
Oh, I
but
see.
you don't see it, in terms, when you count in terms of vertices, faces, and all of those in relationship, you don't see the pi, but it is there.
Gotcha.
The pi only translates something that is, say it's circular, but which when we see locally, it is infinite. And we try to put in a counting number of the number of, how will I say it, of cycles that are in there. Then we arrive at a constant that is infinite as a series.
Okay.
An infinite series.
But isn't it all implied?
Yes.
Yeah. In fact, if Susan were here, she would talk about, because when I showed Susan this guy right here, or I did these diagrams because Susan was talking about this. here we are standing here on a plane and we're experiencing this concave reality. And the convex is not seen. And when they compress because of observation, that's where they flatten out and create that plane. As the concave and the convex combine, they create that plane of our experience.
Yes.
That's what Susan was arguing, that there's a
Yes.
collapse of wave function.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we should, whenever you see anything that will represent as plane is finite. There is no such thing as plane that goes to oblivion anyway. So when you plane is a collapse of something that has a closed shape. Say in this case, the collapse of two spheres that come together to make a segment that locally appears flat and plane.
Right. Okay, cool.
And it's also interesting that when we are on your schematic here, when we are on that side, on the visible concave side, in order to imagine the convex, we represent it with two spheres. Our infinite with two spheres.
Right.
So that implies definitely rotations.
Yeah. And I noticed that I saw some videos this last week on solar energy, and that a lot of solar energy collectors are flat, but some of the most efficient and the new ones they're developing have this, they're curved like this, and they have the sun gathered into this concave thing, and it focuses the energy into a central point and heats it up unbelievably. Much more efficient. Yeah, go ahead.
If Henry was here, he would tell us more. They are not flat. They appear flat, but they are sheets inside. So at the macro level, like when energy comes, it bounces. In actual fact, it's like a focal. The heat doesn't go away. The heat concentrates and it adds up inside there. That's why it heats. For example, you have a water boiler that is solar. It will boil just by convection of fluid, water, passing through, some kind of, how would you call it? Like a radiator exchanger, with the cells of a panel. When it comes to photon, they are transformed into direct electrical current with the same effect. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? We see the flat sheet of a panel, but in actual fact, when it comes to energy accumulation or capturing photons, it is not flat. The micro, it has a thickness, and inside there is a structure that concentrates that energy, that electricity into something that now flows to create the effect that it was intended for.
Cool. Okay, and so any comments or questions? Okay, so this is a video I found this last week where they're using concave solar mirrors, and so that all of this energy reflects into a central point, and it heats it up to like 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And they're talking about this alternative solar, instead of like collecting the solar energy on a flat solar energy collector, they're using the concave mirrors in order to reflect the energy back into a focal point along this line. And this video shows that the energy goes in and then collects in there, and then that it creates steam. And this is a basic demonstration to show how much steam this thing is generating in the snow, in a cold environment. So you can see the thing. But the whole idea, and this guy's talking about how it makes it really cheap. I'm going to go through and see if we can get through this twice as fast. And he explains a little bit about what's going on with conventional stuff. And then he gives further examples of these mirrors that are focusing this energy to this concave thing. And here's another design, and so on. Okay, any comments or questions on that? All right, in this week's stuff, these graphics, including that little slide that shows the building of these 12 degrees of freedom, that's going to go out there. All these graphics are going to go out to you. The links to all these things are there. And we're ready now to move into, whoa, it is the wrong thing. We want to move into tetrahedron. If you guys want to have a conversation before we move into tetrahedron, that's the next reading in synergetics after spheres. I'm going to find that right now. Any comments or questions? Okay. Here we go. Blammo. Now we're continuing in synergetics with 2408. And then I've repeated 2408 here. When I'm gonna cross this out for now. And then the actual reading goes from here down to here. Then I break out again this that thing for my understanding, and then it goes down to here. And so and then it moves into the next part. So 224.08 actually has 3 paragraphs to it. And so John, if you want to start reading,
Sure.
Just read the stuff that's
Tetrahedron.
crossed out.
Okay, tetrahedron. The sum of the angles of a tetrahedron, regular or irregular, is always 720 degrees, just as the sum of the angles of a planar triangle is always 180 degrees. Thus, we may state 2 propositions as follows. The sum of the surface angles of any polyhedron equals the number of, something's in the way, vertexes multiplied by 360 minus 1, tetrahedron, and the sum of the angles of any polyhedron, including a sphere, is always evenly divisible by 1 tetrahedron.
Okay. That's a statement on tetrahedrons. Comments, questions? Okay.
What does the 224.082, what does it mean?
Sum of angles of any polyhedron.
So, as we've been saying, with a sphere, you wind up with 720 degrees. It's the same with a tetrahedron because you've got 4 triangles. Each triangle has angles totaling 180. With the 4 triangles, you wind up with 720.
And the sum of the, go ahead, Manu.
I think, not to waste time, with this question, it means that the tetrahedron is a unit of account.
The tetrahedron is what?
The unit of account.
Yeah.
We're talking about motion. Motion is angle. Angular, everything is built in terms of angular, in momentum, or whatever energy. You can always express it as a formula containing the angle. Amplitude, everything. Once you have a radius, that is, you've cast where you want to go. The other motion that you have, if you want to know exactly where you're going, it is an angle now. Once I cast, I move angularly. So as I move angularly, and if all the sum of possible of my closed domain is divisible by a tetrahedron, that is 720 degrees,
right,
is evenly divisible. It means that the tetrahedron is the unit of account.
Right.
That's another expression of it.
Or the basic structure of the universe. And by measuring tetrahedron, just like we use dollars or some unit of measure, the tetrahedron is the unit of measure. Cool. Okay, continuing. And this will actually completes this section of, if you want to just read this top paragraph here, John.
Sure,
24.
I'll read this and then I would actually like to talk about Descartes.
Okay.
So Descartes is the first of record to have discovered that the sum of the angles of a polyhedron is always 720 degrees, less the number of vertexes times 360 degrees. Descartes did not equate the 720 degrees with the tetrahedron or with the 1 unit of energy quantum that it vectorially constitutes. He did not recognize the constant whole difference between the visibly definite system and the invisibly finite universe, which is always exactly one finite invisible tetrahedron outwardly and one finite invisible tetrahedron inwardly.
Before you give your comments on Descartes, is there any conversation or discussion on these words? What it's saying to me, while he understood some of the geometry and the 720 degrees, he didn't understand the dimensionality. He didn't see 4 dimensions. He didn't understand the relationship between the yin and the yang, the in and the out, the between and the around, this pulsating tetrahedron that creates the visible universe.
I think the most important here, the most important contribution that Bucky had is to say that energy in motion is vectorial. I repeat, energy in motion is vectorial. That is, it has a magnitude and a direction.
Yeah.
Secondly, as a consequence of that, the remaining tetrahedron at 720 degrees unity is a quantum of energy. That is vector, that's what it says here. That 720 degree or tetrahedron is 1 unit of energy quantum that it vectorially constitutes. 1 unit of energy quantum, whether energy radiating, that is the convex tetrahedron, or energy gravitating, that is a concave tetrahedron.
Okay, comments or questions on that? Any other comments or questions on this paragraph before we invite John to talk about Descartes? Go ahead, John.
Okay, well, my wife and I were talking about Descartes this morning. The way it came about is we're studying Eckhart Tolle and consciousness and the universe. And we were walking by the river and a woman walked past us fully engrossed in her phone. She was on her phone as she walked. And we talked about the fact that when we walk, we aim to be aware of the water, the trees, what's around us, so that we see ourselves as part of the universe. And I believe Descartes is the first who is recorded as seeing man as separate from universe, and even worse than that. I think it was Descartes who wrote that nature was a female and her secrets were to be tortured from her. So Cartesian philosophy separates human beings from nature. We're not a part of nature. We're the masters of nature, and we can torture nature, which is exactly what we've done. Speak to David Attenborough. And so it was just triggered by the studying of Tolle's work and then seeing this woman, because while she may have been exercising a body, she was certainly not conscious of the universe and nature around her.
Right.
And while Descartes was very clever in some ways, he was the first, or one of the first philosophers who separated us, saw us as separated from and in control of nature and able to do what we like to nature, whereas all or most Indigenous people saw themselves as part of nature, respected nature, and were aware of if they damage nature, they damage themselves. And so it's very interesting to have Descartes come up here today, where Bucky was clearly aware of universe and our part in the universe, and our ability to destroy the universe around us. And of course, that's a constant topic for us all at the moment, with people like David Attenborough constantly talking about the damage we have done and are doing and what sort of future. I mean, it was Bucky who said, wasn't it, so many times we've rescued ourselves from the brink of extinction. Will we manage it the next time?
Yeah.
So all this may be a waste. We might not be around in a few years' time.
Right. Well, I had my 5 kids, John. So I use my time wisely. Now, it may my grandkids may not have much of a future, but we did okay. Descartes, I think, did that a lot to separate, to create science separate from spirituality. He tried to separate so that he wouldn't get burned at the stake. And so he separated nature and said, okay, we're going to have science over here. So he creates the Cartesian method. If we can see it, we can measure it. That's what's real. If we can't see it and measure it, we don't know what's real. Descartes is the other guy. And that way, leaving that all to the church. He left that to the church. And he created this Cartesian thing. He's also the guy who came up with, I think, therefore I am.
Yes.
You know, ergo, let me see, cognito ergo sum, or something like that. That's the Latin that he wrote. And he's also the guy who came up with the idea that for all we knew, that we were just a brain in a vat being controlled by an evil mastermind. But actually said that as well.
Well, I think a lot of this, the most important thing is that Descartes realized or discovered that the divergent and the convergent exist both. And that was John's experience this morning. Right? He was aware, he was conscious. The lady was engrossed into a phone, with a phone. She didn't notice them.
She was looking at it. She was working on the screen.
Yeah, she did not notice them.
I
But
thought
you noticed. Why did you notice? Because you knew that the whole that was there were you, your spouse, her, and the environment. That is what you call, because Descartes is considered as one of the founders of what you call analytical method. In other words, when they say you are Cartesian, it means that you can put parts together and count them in an orderly way. That's the connotation of Cartesian, right? But what Bucky is saying is that Descartes, when he counted, he saw that there was a remainder of 720.
Yeah.
But it did not connect it to the whole.
Yes.
It didn't connect to the fact that you cannot reduce unity.
Right on.
The soft visible. Our vision is from the fact that we divide. Remember that the way we see, or even think, come from that energy reflects and refracts, right? So becomes packets that come together to make a sense, reconstitute a sense by the brain, right? That's what we see. We see a form, but that form in actual fact is the resultant of a combination of energy that come from many, many directions and reflected to come together into something that we see. So there is a whole, but there are parts. Descartes saw the part, but he didn't relate it to the fact that what is remaining is a packet of vectorial energy. That is the whole.
That's right.
I think that is the essence of this. Otherwise, it will be sterile.
Yeah, mathematically, he came to something, oh, this 720 degrees seems to be consistent with all these polyhedra. However, he didn't understand the idea of the vector equilibrium and how that was that 720 degrees is the secret to the universe that we see in front of us.
But the other stuff that I think that comes out in terms of how do we use this is that when you design whatever that you design, okay, there is no way that you are going to exhaust all the possibilities that exist in the combination forwards of your design, right? Because when you design, you're trying to shape energy because energy is always flowing. but you're trying to say, for example, channel that energy into something. But channeling energy always has consequences, right? Always has consequences.
Right.
And the best way to cater for something that you don't know, but which you know that is a consequence of things that are being done today, is to make provision or some kind of provision for them. And the only currency that we have to making any provision is energy. It means that in our harvesting of energy today, we have to use it in such a way that there is a remainder. Say for example, there is flood in Cape Town here, unexpected, but there is flood in Construct. Really, what do I need to know? If I didn't know that flood is going to come, but what do I need to be able to even have a chance to survive a devastating flood? Is the resources. What are those resources? Is the energy, in what form it is. And I make it is there. It is something that is put aside. Let's just say put on the back burner, but it might prove useful. That is the anti-entropic construct that I will have. I'm not going to be operating to the limit where I have no fat left and I'm super efficient, but forgetting that that super efficiency is the result of certain conditions that I assume. You understand what I don't know if what I'm saying is completely confusing or it makes sense. In that when I'm designing, there will always, what is certain is that there will always happen something that is surprising to me. In order to cater for that thing that is surprising to me, my only currency that I have is some stored energy that I have somewhere. Let's store it there, it's not used now, but it can be useful in the future, depending on the happenings.
So there'll always be something left over.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
But then I have to consciously in my construct, build that leftover.
But regardless of that, whatever you do, there'll always be something left over.
Mhm.
Yes,
And whether you see it or you don't see it, it'll always be there.
yes,
And it's forming another dot.
yes, yes.
Yes.
And a dot that can swallow you in the future. It can completely crush whatever you are building endeavor now.
Yes.
Well, I think this is really critical to this whole conversation about spheres,
Right.
because it's easy for us to see the part that we see. And people start a business or they think a thought. I start a business, I think a thought, and I only look at half of reality. And even when I expand my concaveness and I make my concaveness equal to my convexness, the convexness is still invisible. I have to make an overt effort to see what it is I'm not seeing. And while my business, I want to make it grow out, I want to communicate out, there's an inness to it as well. And both sides of that need to be manifested.
But Steve, let's just try to use this to understand what is going on today. That is the crisis that we have in the world today. Ukraine. And you have to go back to 1990, at least, to understand what is going on today. And there are narratives out there that say this was actually people like Kissinger have written about this. If there is anything happen, it's going to be Ukraine, and because of A and B. You understand what I'm trying to say? But today we just have one narrative,
right,
that focuses on the point of a day. But if you really want to understand the whole context of the stuff, you better be able to have studied that history or to be recall of that history and see the dynamic that took us to this brink of catastrophe of today.
Yeah.
And
Or it's going to happen anyway.
Yes. And it is it will be very different from what is being projected on TV every day.
Right.
And Kelly, what did you say? I didn't hear clearly what you said.
That's going to happen anyway. Energy flows to the least line of resistance. Energy always flows.
Generalized principle. Actually, not. I don't like that word generalized. It is a principle. It is a fundamental principle.
Yeah.
So no matter what you think, you start something and it's going to end up somewhere else.
Yes.
Cool. That's all of our reading for tonight. I wish I were more prepared on Descartes because I have some really good stuff on Descartes and his I think therefore I am concept and the way he separated in order to protect himself from the church to create science, because everything up to that point was integrated. And it was Descartes who separated human beingness and science from whatever was going on naturally, and started to look at only what could be measured and what could be accounted for, and this state of empiricism that we're in. So
I think, Steve, I really think that I'm actually personally quite satisfied, and I thank you for your leadership. The whole myth of this geometry of Bucky is the gravitational and the radiative coexisting and always pulsating. And that is
relate gravitational.
Really yes, it is
relate that
really
to concave and convex. Go ahead.
Yes, that is another, that duality that Kelly talked about in the beginning. It is the world at the very fundamental is a duality. But everything is a duality. You can see the one manifestation now, and the other one is somewhere you don't see, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So once you're conscious of those things, it gives you the basic to really apply that principle. Because everything else, in terms of mathematics or whatever, it is the combination and the recombination of those things, resulting into some temporary or whatever stable forms that you have. You close energy for a while for it to be in tension, compression, that is in equilibrium. And after a while, something happens that is going to disrupt that equilibrium, or either you maintain it or you go with, you redesign. And that is the essence of life. We are always designing and redesigning. That's what I take from this.
You're always in motion.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Comments, questions? Okay, I want to come back to this thing because you see this diagram right here?
Mm-hmm.
This is actually a bow tie.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
That's a bow tie. If I take this right over here and I stack it right on top of there, I got one sphere up here that I see and the other sphere down here that I don't see. And as I began to expand my awareness, these tend to collapse to create this plane here. I wish I had a video showing this sphere coming down and this sphere coming up. And as it does, this line expands.
See,
Because
show your bow tie with the magnet again. Show it.
yeah, I'm going to show it.
Yeah.
It got stuck together over here when I put it down. Hang on a second. I unfortunately, I'm using the thin, my not so powerful magnets. And so the structure is very unstable. The stability of the structure has everything to do with the power of the electromagnetic field that's actually going around on it. Okay.
But something interesting.
Okay. Whoop, there we go. Hang on. Aha, here comes my bow tie.
Yeah,
There
show
we-
it. In the physical world, where are you, Steve?
In the physical world, I'm right there. This is me.
No, I'm not talking about your mental world. I'm not talking about the way you think.
Okay.
Physically, where are you?
I guess I have to be inside of there.
I would suggest that you are on the top triangle floating on the boat there,
I'm on
on
the,
that window. On the top, you know where your index is? Look
Yeah.
at where you're holding your index.
yeah.
That's where you are. You are
Okay.
on the boat, yes, physically. So the purple part of your structure, you can't see it. It is the reaction to your being on top there.
Yeah.
You get what I'm trying to say? Physically, you know, we think, well, the way to correctly think is that we are in between at the neck of the boat. That's the way you have to think, right?
So I think
So
I'm
when you
here.
are there, when you are showing, you are conscious of the concave and the convex, but that is only through thoughts, right? When you are on top of it, look where your finger, where your index is, on top floating, you are deceived by the flatness. You are on your boat floating on sea.
Okay.
Of course,
You get
the
you
bow
get the
tie
metaphor?
is very efficient
Yes,
because when you look at the middle, it actually drops a ball out
Yeah.
Mm.
because you could have two tetrahedrons coming together, but instead you've got one tetrahedron making the other tetrahedron by the ball in the middle because it drops a ball out.
exactly.
Right.
Is efficiency because at there you are collapsed to a point, to a sphere. You are conscious completely of all directions.
Right there.
Yes.
Shit, I'm using the thin magnet. So I'm doing what I can here to demonstrate the fact that there's a ball missing.
But thinking, think about it, Steve.
Yeah.
Thinking can also be said to try to be in that state at that point, where you have maximum efficiency of energy flow, but awareness of all directions, spherical awareness. That's thinking. That's why it is so elusive. The aha, you have the aha, but you cannot stay there for all time. When you have that aha, you're conscious, you have to note it down. Otherwise, it goes away. You get me? So in our practice, once we reach the aha moment, that is, we are in there conscious of things, we immediately have to find something to note it down in our journal, in whatever. This is the feeling. This is the what I discover, what I experience. If you don't, you're going to be lost into the maze of many things that are happening around you, and you lose that state. So to me, realizing that that is also thinking, that's what you call thinking, is very important. So what do I do now? Once I think, when I reach that state, what do? I need to train myself to note it down. That's part of our practice. I need to train myself to think, to just immediately, maybe I was sleeping and I'm in my rapid eye movement phase of sleeping. I was thinking something came like that, boom, I have to write it down. Or if I recall it, I have to write it down, otherwise I'll forget. That is the efficient use of the limited resources that we have. We store it, we account for it, we store it, and we're going to use it for something. Does it make sense?
Yeah. Comments, questions? Cool. And we finished our reading for tonight. So unless somebody wants to take this in a direction,
I think that you have to now take it into the direction of motion, bonding, and
Yeah.
all of these things for us to understand. Because that's what really the part that is really, really readily kind of applicable to the social.
Aha.
Bonding, rebonding, disrupting bonding, what are the consequences and things like that? What can you do?
The bonding is reshaping.
Yes. I think that's where if we have to discuss anything further on this geometry, that's where we have to go.
When Bucky collapses that equilibrium into the tetrahedron, I think he says, what bonding does he say is present in a tetrahedron?
It's a quadrant.
Quadruple bonding. He said each vector, each edge of its tetrahedron is 4 bonds.
Right. And okay.
So
You go to synergetics, there's a part on trait. I forget the page number, but it actually goes through bonding and it explains it through a network of a trait.
Yes.
So you can
Okay.
see the air, the water, finally the quadrobond, which is the outer skin of the tree.
Yeah, in his video, I just captured this idea. There's the quad bonding right there.
Yes.
You can see the 4 vectors, 4 vertices that have come together to create that tetrahedron. The octahedron is double bonded and the tetrahedron is quadruple bonded.
Yep.
So coming back to design and channeling energy and how there are always consequences. I know this is a while back, but what are those consequences? Are those trade-offs essentially?
Say again?
So basically, when we were talking about design earlier and the channeling of energy, and you mentioned, Manu, that there are always consequences to channeling energy.
He said there's always something left over.
Left over.
Well, yeah, that part too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said there's always something left over, but there's always consequences. Like, I guess is that the same thing as being left over?
Not
Well,
necessarily.
Well, if you take the basic mathematics or the basic thing of it, you say action, reaction, resultant.
Right.
So reaction is a direct consequence. Reaction is a direct consequence of action. Okay, is a conjugate. It is that makes it a duality.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
The two exist. But a resultant is going towards something, is energy that is directed, that is now in motion, going to somewhere.
Okay.
And it will do something. And our design, our quest of design, that's what we call anticipative design. Anticipatory, Bucky used the word anticipatory design, is to try to, as much as possible, account for what will happen as a consequence of your action and reaction.
Anticipatory design.
Yes. So that is what is called shaping the future.
Shaping the.
Yeah, you know that energy will come back to you, but you want it to come back maybe in a certain way. So you shape it. You shape it. It's like if you are pumping and say for example you have your a thermal engine, right?
Right.
That is losing heat because
Right.
as a consequence of it. And then you design something to capture at least part of that heat that you reuse, right?
That's right.
Yes. So there are actually thermal generators that do that. You have a turbine. The turbine goes into the first cycle,
Right.
and then you capture the remainder of energy, the same packet energy, part of it that was input, and then you reuse it in another cycle, right? They call it combined cycle, for example, electricity generation. When you burn gas, and then the heat of a gas of the first burning, you capture that heat, and then you use it again to heat further, you know, and extract more energy, more electrical energy. So the efficiency of a single cycle generator, the efficiency is somewhere around 40%, 50%. With a combined cycle, people go to 70%, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was anticipatory design.
And
You
I'm sorry.
improve on the use of energy by doing more with a unit of primary energy spent. You get what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
And that has been the quest of design, to ever do more with less.
I was about to say, what's the relationship with ephemeralization? And
That is the process of ephemeralization.
That's the process of doing ephemeralization, essentially.
Yes. Sometimes you go to a limit of certain process and you have to jump onto something else with new technology, new design completely, right? So you have a gain of productivity, you gain, but then you hit a limit. You have to revisit the paradigm from the beginning and design something, because you have learned in the process of using that energy some new things. That's awareness.
That's awareness.
And that is actually also the basis for training. They say you repeat, you're learning. Once you repeat, it means that you're recalling the memory. You every time memory recall, so you are getting more. You are becoming more efficient by repeating.
Can I tell a story, Joe?
Please, yeah.
Okay.
Great.
2 weeks ago, my house flooded. And because I'm on the hill and the water flows, I'm halfway up a hill. So I get all the water coming and it goes around my house because my house is there. But it takes a lot to do that. Now, from my front yard to my backyard, I get water pooling, but I've got to move it along. So I've built a situation where the water comes in, pools, it slows down, and then it goes out to my backyard. But it does it in a cycle. So I know that when it rains a lot, that I'm going to channel the water so that it goes into my lower backyard, because I live on the side of a hill, so it's graduating downwards or inwards. And as you see it, you can see I've had like water rushing on my fence line from the rain.
Mm.
And so when we deal with it, we have to channel the water. We have to decide where it's going to go. But when we do that, we have to work inside the parameters of the water. You know, how's the water going to move? And then work with that, because the whole front of my house is flooded.
Right.
You know, up to my front door. The only thing is it never gets in because it runs all the way down my block.
Mm-hmm.
And it runs in a channel. And in that channel, It's like it's one thing in the universe. It's just one thing that we do to channel water. And then when you see the water channel, goes down to my backyard, and I've got trees. I've got fruit trees in my backyard. And guess what? They grow. And they do very well. But they do very well from the movement of the water. It's all connected.
So channeling the energy, essentially you made the whole process regenerative.
Yeah, I had to, because either that or my house gets washed away.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I leave it, then my house is damaged. Now, what I do is just, who knows why, but I just know intuitively that I've got to flow the water off and not just leave it to its own device, because its own device, I wouldn't have a house eventually,
Mm-hmm.
because it would erode everything.
Oh,
Because by following the channel, the water moves okay, and it doesn't go stagnant. It just moves right down to the backyard. And in the backyard, it does its work. It grows trees, it grows grass, it does whatever's going on there. So you can see that when it passes my office window, it's like a raging river, because all these big ponds go into little ponds, and then they go down my fence line. Now my fence line, I've over the years, I've made it concrete so that when the water comes, it flows down with very little resistance, and so it just keeps going. That's design, and understanding that's what's needed. So,
And you heard that he said over the years,
yes,
he made his fence line concrete. What does it mean?
Yeah.
Over the years.
Yeah, well, because it's happened so many times, I
Exactly.
anticipate it. And so along my fence is concrete. So you've got grass growing, but underneath the grass is concrete. And so when it flows down, it actually turns. So it comes down onto my property, and then I've got to get it to flow. So I've got all my levels so that it turns a corner, follows the corner, because it's just designed that way. Otherwise, it won't do that. It'll just stagnate. So we can have a lot of water. I mean, we had something like 300 millimeters in a day. And when you get that, it's like rushing at my front door. So I've got to think about that. And so I've got gravel on that. It goes into a thing that curves around my house. And when it curves around my house, I don't want it to sit there. I want it to move. So I put concrete down, and away it goes.
Mm.
That's how pragmatic I am about design.
And I will contend that the list that we can take from this discussion that we've been having over the years is to try to apply it to our local environment.
Yes.
It's always beneficial.
yes.
If you try to do it, if it doesn't work, fine, you learn something.
Yeah, well, you make a lot of mistakes before you get to where you want to go, I can tell you.
Yes.
And a lot of gravel goes into I've lost more gravel than you can poke a stick at.
Yeah.
Because when the water goes, it takes the gravel with it.
It's all about understanding the flow of energy.
Yes.
No matter what. in all things.
Yes. So when I look at it, a tetrahedron, I can look at it going this way or this way. I can go back in or I can go back out.
Right.
Mm.
And it's the betweenness that you're watching. Because I just consider myself to be Steve's black dot. And
Steve's
my
black
life-
dot.
Yeah, it's black dot. His
In the
biggest
middle, right?
black
Ah,
dot.
okay, dot. I
Yeah,
had dot.
and I just consider each person to be a black dot.
Yes.
It's a black dot. They're joining up, they're coming together, and they're moving apart. So I don't like, you can get into the geometry of it all, but it's all implied.
Mm.
Now, are you guys all complete on that? Because I've been having an epiphany while you guys have been talking. So if I may, I'm going to share. So here's this one state of the universe, which is the bow tie.
Right.
And as these collapse into a paradigm that's visible to me, I'm actually experiencing a double tetrahedron.
Yes.
Always.
So I go from the bow tie to the double tetrahedron. I live in a double tetrahedron. Descartes discovered the synchronicity of the 720 degrees. Descartes discovered that, but he did not see the underlying significance of this yin yang, in and out, bow tie, double tetrahedron, Merkaba experience. He saw
Bow-
that
He
bow
didn't know.
ties-
He didn't know about the bow tie.
No, the bow tie is about efficient use of energy. Because it drops a ball out. So when you look at your bow tie and it's rotating, it drops something out and it becomes more a cosmic accounting.
Yes.
Because it's dropping that out. It's dropping, you see, when you've got that, it's joining it together. Now you imagine you can build a tetrahedron or you can build 100 tetrahedron, but each one of them has lost the ball.
right
Yes.
on. So in this structure, when they're separate, there's a vertex there, and there's a
Yeah.
vertex here. There are two
Mm.
vertices, but when they combine to create the bow tie, one of the vertices drops out,
Yes.
Yeah.
and that
And
is
that
Yeah.
will make it efficient as well.
You know,
It is the whole.
Einstein in 1905 or something, or before that, didn't need all the mathematics to make his hypothesis about the equivalence of mass and energy. You remember? He was working in this patent in Bern, patent office in Bern. And he used to examine all of these proposals for these ideas coming from people of these constructs. And all of a sudden he has that flash. And he took it to make a bold proposal. I'm just trying to tie it to what Kelly was saying about the bow tie. The bow tie is not stable. The bow tie is an equilibrium, a state where you pass and something has crystallized completely, and then you see it crystallize. Is for you to make note of it and make a sense of it and mark it for next time it comes along again, for you to recognize it. Otherwise, you forget about it. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yep.
Mhm.
Is a state of awareness that is not stable. It just comes and goes.
Hmm.
You get it? And that's when you realize a generalized principle. Because before that, you talk about mass and energy who will say that I mean, people like Poincaré, the French mathematician, came to the micron of just deducting from their equations that relationship. They did it. I mean, read history. Poincaré was there before Einstein. And there are many others. He's not the only one that came so close. Right?
That's right.
But it didn't make, yes. He did not realize that it was this that I was seeing here. Either sometimes people are scared even to take a jump. And taking that jump is risk, is a faith, is a bold statement, is a manifestation of faith rather than a deduction of something. It is a manifestation of faith.
Would you say that risk is what you have to take in the universe for anything to happen?
Yes.
You have to take a risk. If you don't take a risk, nothing happens.
Right. That's the action and the reaction.
Yep. And eventually, eventually we all take a risk. You think of the saber-toothed tiger. You think of, oh, you're in your cave and you don't want to come out of your cave because there's a saber-toothed tiger, but eventually something gets you out of the cave.
Yeah.
I think that's what Kelly always say. Kelly always say, you know, decision is actually innate. The question is it your decision? Or was it decided for you? Because always have to move. You know, like, for example, you come to be conscious of something. Then do you decide to take it on? Do you decide to run away? Do you decide to freeze? That's quite primary, right? So in one case, you took risk. In the other one, you froze. But even freezing, something happens. Yeah. I saw today, you know, a lioness. I saw a movie of a lioness. I don't know that did what to. No, it was a leopard that did something to the cup of an elephant and climbed on top of a tree. And the elephant just was there, moving, shaking the tree, shaking completely, until the leopard had to jump and run for her life. Right? So that was something that was decided there by the elephant to do as a consequence of something. What I wanted to say here is that, Joe, your decision is a lack. At lack with regard to consciousness. If it's not, you realize, and then you act, you decide.
Okay.
Okay. Comments, questions? I'm continuing with my epiphanies over here. because once I have that double tetrahedron, then I have an implied octahedron inside of it because everything is fractal and everything has an equilibrium. So as soon as I see a double tetrahedron, I have an implied octahedron.
Yeah.
Right.
What does imply mean, Steve?
Means it's there, I just ain't seeing it.
But okay, let me put it. I want you to say it in a different way. What does imply mean? To me, if I can help you that way, it means that in the finite universe, and you divide, and is expanding, there's some kind of something like unformed or void.
Mhm.
I'll call it void between quotes inside that allow you amplitude, that allow you to fold in and unfold in again. In other words, for me, for energy to pass through something, there got to be a window. I repeat, from energy to flow inside something that is closed or outside of it, there got to be window. So to me, the implied octahedron is that to say that there is something in there that is still malleable, that I can still combine, but which I'm not seeing now, I'm not using, is implied from something, from assumption about my universe.
Yeah, and it'll always start macro and go to micro.
Exactly.
So when you're thinking about it, you go to your macro, but your macro will change. As you learn something, you have a new macro, and then you have, the micro just moves along with it. It's a macro micro. So you're macro and you get a further distance always between.
So when you have your macro, Steve, there is the implied micro, right? And you have to be conscious of it to intentionally move into it. Let's just say is your local into. You are aware of a generalized principle. How do I use it locally?
Right on. And inside the
What do I do different in my law practice to be able to have a maximum impact in terms of serving my clients or serving the causes that I support? That's the way it will, that's the way you're going to now to draw from your experience of the macro into that local practice to solving some problem that exists. Maybe it might be Aborigines who don't have title to their land, or they've been moved out of the land, or there is a necessity to preserve their ways of being in a way that is least intruded by commercials. So that is now applied in a way that provides some kind of, I wouldn't say harmony, but coexistence. Let's just put it this way: coexistence. And to me, the social takes many dimensions. I mean, there's an infinite dimensions to the social. That is the divisibilities, infinite divisibilities. How do we apply those generalized rules in other way that there's order locally?
Yeah, it's infinite dimension, finite space.
Yeah. And Kelly, last Wednesday, I took you tell me if I was wrong in doing that. I'm saying I took the franchising model as something like this, in that you've realized the general principle. You've applied them locally at your model, at your business, in such a way that things are really orderly. In other words, they are predictable within the realm of your business.
Yes.
Now you decide that you want to repeat, you want to franchise it, right? So you want that packet that has proven locally to you to be transported flexibly somewhere else in another context and still work locally there with those rules clean.
Yes.
In other words, you want a tight control of every franchisee at local. The franchisee has to have tight control of his business, but
getting harder to do
the network in the most flexible way.
Yeah, it's getting harder to do with the transparency that's coming out.
Yes, but I was trying to, last Wednesday when we were having discussion, to say that is the applicability of this geometry that we're talking about.
Yes.
You have a constellation. That constellation is held very loosely but they obey too. And every star is a star of its own. In other words, it's radiating, its planet. They are relating to them as we relate to the sun.
Yeah.
And the other thing I've got out of this is that inside of every micro is another micro, and outside of every macro is another macro.
Yeah.
So just when I think I start to understand something, I realize I don't understand it.
That's healthy.
Yeah, and that's going to be continuous for the rest of your life, Steve.
Yeah, it's disgusting. And just to show you how this graphic thing has evolved, with the Epiphany, start with this simple outline up here, then realize that these outlines are implying these triangles, which are really 2D representations of tetrahedra. But now there are spheres, implied energy spheres from each of the vectors, and those get applied. And this looks a lot like the Metatron's cube. If it were 3D, it would be Metatron's cube. And then there's this implied octahedron. Yes. So there's all these implications. And if I don't look at my business, if I don't look at my thought,
right,
the parameters we've been talking about tonight, in terms of the energy flowing and the micro inside the micro and the macro outside the macro, we're going to be missing the point. So I've had a lot of fun building these things while we've been talking.
Yeah, Steve, I'm going to say something to you now.
Okay, please.
We should finish on time because you're asking people to give up time.
I agree.
You wonder over their time and you wonder why people don't come back. It's because you wonder over their time.
Yeah, we've been pretty good about the time, and you're right. I've been listening to this discussion about the energy flowing, and I lost track. So let's.
No. I'm saying, Steve, on a weekly basis, your leadership is great, but your timing is shit.
Okay, thank you. So, John, how are you feeling tonight? What's your takeaway?
Oh dear. Look, Kelly's spot on. I mean, the meetings have grown from an hour and a half to 2 hours, and there have been times I've just had to walk away on the 2 hours. One of the reasons this meeting's been particularly important is we've got a significant board meeting this week. I've just been jotting down some thoughts about some of the things we've been talking about, the visible, invisible, the nature of relationships. I'm running a legal firm, and that's only a very small part of it. It's the nature of the relationships and alignment and the flow of energy. And there's nothing more powerful than a team that is really aligned. So the first thing is the alignment, and then setting the goals. And are they common goals? So why are we meeting? What are our goals? Are we aligned? Look, I don't want to spend the next 2 hours talking about this, so I'm going to keep it short. But yeah, it's been great. It's triggered a lot of thought to take away and apply a number of these issues in preparation for a board meeting this week. So thank you all for your contributions, and I'm very happy at the end of it, and happy that you're here, Kelly. It's good to have you. So Kelly, how do you feel and what do you take out of today?
I was tired at the beginning. I'm exhausted now. Keeping up with you guys is hard work. I've enjoyed it because I put myself there, and I realize that when I just listen, that it's too hard. I've got to say something. So I enjoyed this call. So thank you to everyone. And thank you, Steve, for your masterful leadership. Raffers, how do you feel and what do you take away?
Nothing again exhausted at this call as well. And because there's quite a lot we need to chew on and analyze and study and reflect upon. So I always enjoy the fact that my mind is stretched, and and by doing that, I get more understanding about how universe works. And again, I appreciate again Steve's leadership in these calls. My takeaway today is in how energy works and how actually the universe gets rid of what's unnecessary. Like, you know, the extra ball when the two tetrahedra come together. And I guess the same thing applies to us as a species. I mean, if we don't provide, or we don't create, we don't do what nature is supposed to do, and we are not in harmony with that purpose, we'll be just, the whole universe will drop off. So that's my takeaway today. And I very much look forward not to becoming, you know, or not to going to oblivion, as Bucky would say. So grateful for that. Joe, how about you, mate? How do you feel and what's your takeaway?
I feel fantastic. You know, I agree with Kelly that I mean I too started off a little bit tired, but now I'm exhausted. But I also agree that it's that this is not a spectator sport. The more that you get involved in it, and the more you start to ask questions, and the more you put things together, it starts to make more sense. One of the main takeaways that I have from today has to do with anticipatory design and really what that means, and how that actually relates to ephemeralization, and how you can get all the way to ephemeralization from anticipatory design, where you're actually trying to do more. You're trying to take what's left over and do more and more with less and less. So that process, I actually kind of have my own. If you could see them drawings, they're not. They're not going to be hanging in any museums anytime soon, but they're helpful for me to get my mind thinking, and to really kind of to keep pushing forwards. And that's what I try and do each week, just a little bit, and make some connections that I previously would not have made. You know, some of the things that Kelly had said, just by reiterating them, they were very helpful, and inside, outside, between and around. The more that you say it, the better, the more it resonates. So thank you, Steve. Thank you, Manu, for you know, your continued teaching and conversations. It's been fantastic. And Manu, how do you feel? What did you take away from today?
I feel very good. I feel I'm grateful that those who have to be there are there. Really, thank you, Kelly, for making the effort to be here. Steve, you were fantastic. I mean, you took shit, but that's it. So, but one thing that I really want to stress here, I mean, that is my personal opinion. We're not selling anything.
We're frozen.
Yes. And I give shit respect to somebody who comes and see that he's not receiving what he wanted and ducks out. To me, it's shit. Some might disagree with me, that's shit. If you think that it is not good, what is, we are open to you participating, take the leadership role, come more, and try to give. I think that is a lot better than coming in and saying the others who took the risk to put in their time and coming in did it and didn't do it better. It's too easy a position. We had 25 or 20 people last year. They're all duck out. They are losers. I repeat, they are losers. And I don't beg them to come back. If they really want to come back, they come back. Okay? And they participate. I mean, Steve, I've been here. I sit here. Steve, I've been calling me every minute trying to put this thing together. And I'm sure he's done that with rappers. He's done with Kelly who's sick. He's done with John. He's done with Joe, with Susan. And I really respect that. Thank you, Steve. That's what I take out of this. You can be brought to the river, but you can't make somebody drink that water. If he doesn't want to drink it, he drinks. And he wants to take it more to distribute to others. That is to expand it out. That's what I take out of this. Steve, how do you feel? What do you take away?
Well, first thing I notice is that my timing may be shit, but we have 4 minutes left to go. Now, I started the call 5 minutes late, beyond the appointed time, to give people time.
So that's your problem, Steve. You
Thank
started the call 5 minutes late. You
Beyond the
start
appointed
on
time.
time and you finish on time.
Okay, well, we'll start on time next week. We're going to finish on time tonight. I have 3
It's
minutes.
the discipline of that disciplines everything.
Gotcha. Point well taken. So, but my takeaway, and thank you, Manu, for and all of you for acknowledging the fact that I'm leading these calls. If I wish I felt more adequate in the thing, and I do what I do the best I can do it. And I'm happy to turn the ship over to anybody. And I've, you know, and until we figure it out, I'm happy to hang around. So, listen, tonight, I loved our conversation. About 10 minutes, about 14 minutes, about an hour and 14 into the call, I was worried that we wouldn't get 2 hours. And you guys have picked up the ball and had a meaningful discussion. And I think that's very powerful. And with a minute to spare, I'm going to say my takeaway is that, you know, every person who attends the call gets what they get when they get it. And I'm so grateful that everyone is sharing, because that is how I glean anything out of this call. I'm complete. I'll
Thank you, Steve.
see you next
Good to
time
see
around.
you. See you.
And
Thank
thank
you, Steve.
everybody. Thanks. Thank everybody. Yeah. Okay.
You
We
betcha.
always talk like this. We are frank with ourselves.
That's
That's
exactly right.
That's the DNA of this group.
And we
Well, we're
still have a
definitely
Say
Over
what
and we're definitely doing better than Susan's patient who's has a Corona bottle next to his colon. So I don't know. So I don't know how that happened. But
Did you get a text?
See you
from
later.
Susan?
take
See you
care. Yeah, I
later.
did. I did.
Oh, I
And
get it.
so
I get it.
yeah,
Bye.
that was brutal.
Okay, take
Bye-bye,
care.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye. Bye.
Hey,
You
Steve.
survived. You thanks for
No,
speaking.
I mean, Steve, we are not selling anything.